Can you hear pins drop? Can you hear pins drop? Do you listen to what's being said beyond words? Can you feel the energy and the essence of what underlies what's going on much of the time? Can you sense it? And is your life and your consciousness and your mind still enough that you can eavesdrop on the mind of God? That you can eavesdrop on the essence of life and hear with new ears that are beyond physical. Listening skills can save or starve relationships, and they can stop or start wars. We can listen to what's being said and what's not being said. How many of you are cued in to racist and bigoted language so much that you hear things other people might not hear? That when things are said, it doesn't go by your ears, you notice. How many of you have heard something in a moment where something racist is shared and you or those around you didn't say anything and you heard a lot being said in the silence? There is an art to listening beyond listening. You can hear discomfort, pregnant pauses, words beyond words. You can hear hurt. You can hear victimhood. You can hear a story. You can hear a story that someone lives from. You can hear the ego. You can hear suffering. You can hear lack. When you hear your own language, you can open up the portal to transformation. In Unity, we look a lot at what we believe, which leads to our thoughts, which leads to the words we choose. And we use it as part of our transformation practice, do we not? There isn't one prosperity class that goes by that you don't invite everyone there to start listening to their language around their finances and their consciousness of abundance. You say to them, just pay attention to how you feel when you write a check, when you pay a credit card bill, when you make a deposit. Pay attention to any words of lack that create an essence and a vibrational field around your finances. How do you feel when you give? How do you feel when you see wealth? How do you feel when you see poverty? And through taking on a deeper looking at life and at self, we can find our transformation. The same thing happens with health. In Unity, we are built on the foundation of healing principles. Myrtle Fillmore, through a consciousness of deep awareness, mindful listening, and awakening to truth principles, she activated healing energies in her life. She did that really too by vigilantly looking at her language around her own well-being and her physical health. And then she used the power of the word to speak to every cell in her body temple, to speak to her organs, her bones, to speak to her entire physical being, and through the power of the word, lift them up and heal them. I highly doubt you would hear that woman talking about her own body in a lack or unholy way, because she got it, that what I express about this body temple is tied into my consciousness, and consciousness builds and creates. But so much of how we show up is unconscious, is it not? And it's those unconscious areas that if we are willing to slow down enough to look at them, well, to even figure out they're there, honestly, right? Because unconscious means we aren't aware of them. Unless you're in a relationship, you can get it all the time. we be conscious? And how do we become conscious of that which we are unconscious of? The first step is just being willing. Maybe launching a prayer. Show me the things I don't see, that if I were to see them, hear them, feel them, presence them, acknowledge them, I wouldn't choose to be in line with them. Show me. Heal me at depth so that I may be emancipated, liberated from the unconscious thinking that binds me unknowingly, that binds the field around me, and that I collectively join with others to bind the world with. There was an article title that said, "Tell me what you did today and I'll tell you who you are." Michael Beckwith says, if you are not thinking for yourself, someone else is thinking for you. He'll be in this sanctuary on Wednesday, October 18th. I hope you have saved the date for the whole Agent Council that's going to be here for an evening service for you and to lift this community together. Our thoughts are formative. We've heard thoughts become things over and over and over in unity. From beliefs, we have thoughts, and we express them. When they're unconscious, they don't always seem to serve us and the greater good. So how often do we ask ourselves, are my words part of the solution or part of the problem? Are they repeats of my programming, or are they consciously chosen? Do I even know what I'm saying? Are you already hearing things? I am. Do I know what I'm saying means not just to me, but to others? Do I know how the words and the consciousness I am activating and participating in and using meets others? A lot of people, when they meet that growing edge of going, yeah, I get it that to some people it means this, but what I really mean by that word is that. With limited language, language that labels people, language that diminishes or limits or does not honor the divine blueprint of others? Are we willing to loosen the ego's attachment to saying, well, when I say that word, I really mean this? And that's technically what the word means in Webster's dictionary. Even though someone coming from that experience may say right to my face, when you use that language, it means this to me. It means this to my son. It means this to my people. Are we willing to soften ourselves enough and open our consciousness enough to expand our sense of self into a collective sense of self? For a long time, I thought, I think a lot of people thought this. You know, we heard about violence in our films and in our world, and, you know, there are some folks that say, oh, there shouldn't be any scary movies, or there shouldn't be any violent movies, or this, that. We need to stop it all, stop it all. And there are many of us that were like, whatever, you know, it's not going to make that much of a difference. Or it's too fanatic, which there is a degree, right, to which we can go overboard. If we say our words mean something, and if we say thoughts become things, and if we say we shouldn't have violence in films, well, it's not you see one violent film and you go shoot people, right? And it's not that one experience can always directly lead to another. If you use a word, that doesn't mean that you are lowly little one of awful consciousness. sometimes we can see patterns of our collective agreement. I grew up with, how to say this in a light way, a lot of freedom around what we would watch on television. And so we would, as little kids sometimes, watch like all the Freddy Krueger movies and all the Jason movies, and like, I don't even like saying those words in here. But you know what I'm saying, the whole slew of them. And I grew up 3 little girls. There were 3 little girls of us, you know. And then, of course, like, we were terrified of, like, everything. Like, we were terrified if the phone rings. We were terrified if we were left alone. And, you know, we went through school and went through college. And then, you know, you're in college and you live with people. And then you get your first place, your first apartment. When you get your first apartment, you're like, what's that sound? What's that sound? Who's that at the door? It's horrible and horrifying. And one of my other sisters that was kind of a little compadre as far as, like, you know, we would watch those things. We didn't find out until later, a little bit later, that we both cut out any sort of extreme violence, horror films, anything that was too disturbing. We just cut it all out. It was like, you know what? Like, I need to relax. I'm ready to feel safe. Stopped watching all of it. I still like suspense, but, and that's just me. And when that changed, so did how I feel showing up. So did how I feel in my home. So did how I feel going through a park at night alone as a woman. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't make sure I was safe. But literally, I kid you not, I used to walk in college with a key through every finger. And this is probably smart, actually, on college campuses. I hate to say that, but it's probably true that it's smart. But I would stick my keys through my fingers, and then I would just walk home. I was not taught to be a wimp growing up when it was needed as far as being safe, very physically safe. I was not taught to just go, ah. Which is kind of scary, because that means I was taught to prepare for something awful happening. Can we hear the conversations that go on in our own head? And consciously and mindfully make alterations to step out of consciousness that has violence, fear, lack, limitation. Do you know how many, and again, not a criticism, to each their own, but do you know how many people have homes full of guns, ready to shoot? And how many people have never had a gun in their home? And how many people even sleep with the doors unlocked? Now, if you could take an assessment of those folks in those homes and look at how much fear there is in those homes, do you think that unequivocally you'd find that the folks that had homes full of guns have less fear than those that are gun-free? It's just something to think about. How safe do you feel in your home? How safe do you feel on this planet? Really noticing. Because there could be a 6'4" man, it's big and burly, with a whole bunch of guns loaded and ready to go, that sadly feels much, much less safe than a 4'10" woman that weighs 85 pounds. You can hear a pin drop. Conscious, unconscious creation. Are my words, is my conscious awareness part of what I want to co-create, expand, and continue? Or is it mine to do some inventories into the areas of my life that I would like to have more alignment with what I want to expand and create on this planet? Am I repeating my programming, or am I consciously choosing? Am I repeating my childhood, or am I consciously making choices for my spiritual maturity? Do I know what I'm saying? There is a vibrational field of creation that each of us is adding to. We add our mental creative energy when we think and when we speak and when we act. Eric Butterworth, Unity's probably most known minister of the day, said this: we need to work constantly to heighten our consciousness, to build positive vibrations within. We do this most effectively through the power of the spoken word. Charles Fillmore says, words are the most powerful agents of the mind. Every time we speak, we cause the atoms of the body to tremble and change their place. When you speak, you send forth vibrations that the Bible says has the power of life and death. Isaiah says, woe to those who decree iniquitous decrees. So can we give our word vibration our attention? That's the first step. Are we willing to give it our attention? And that's a big step. It's not a small step, because it means I may find things that I have the opportunity to change if I want to have different results in my life. And it may mean you change the movies you go to. It may mean you change the people you hang out with. It may mean that you become one of them. The ones that you always thought were ridiculous. It may mean that you switch your idea of what a side is and realize there's no sides, there is just consciousness. And that we freely flow in it. So are we willing to give our minds our attention? We all know what it's like when you can hear a pin drop. Are we willing to create space so that we can notice things? If we decide to do this, we can make a difference, and we can choose consciously not to participate in perpetuating a programming that we all go through, that we no longer wish to create from. One of my favorite ministers in the Unity movement is Reverend Wendy Craig Purcell. She is from San Diego, and she serves there at the Unity Spiritual Center there. And I was recently at a conference with her, and she is coming here and will be in this house on that October 18th event when Agent is in town. She is part of that collective. And I was at a meeting with her at this conference, and we had just started the meeting, and we're just throwing around ideas. And she paused us, and she said, just a moment. Let's listen to that. We stopped and listened, wondering what we were listening to. And she said, I'm just noticing lately, and I'm just present to, really, really present to how much violence is in our language, unconsciously. How much violence is just embedded in our language. And she gave the example of whatever we were talking about, and it was probably something like bullet points. Think about that. We don't think about that, do we? A bullet point. Take a piece of paper and take a gun and shoot a hole through it, and you've got a point, and you got a few of them, and you got bullet points. And since she said that, I have been keenly aware, because you know what? All it takes is a suggestion to pay attention to something. It's like buying a car. The second you buy an orange Subaru, you notice all of the orange Subarus on the road. So like if we're willing on this spiritual path and practice to do the work, all we have to do is say yes to the invitation, and the rest will happen to us. So she says this, so I start paying attention. My awareness starts to hear the pins dropping. You know how everyone always says you can't be taught to hate? Or you have to be taught to hate. You can be taught to hate. You can be taught to be violent. When you look at the depth of the framework in which we are programmed, in which we come into being, you notice things. So I have a list of some for you. You can probably think of some on your own right now already. You're probably churning. When push comes to shove, take a stab at it. To be brutally honest, soften the blow. That really bombed. Blown away, killer smile. Killing time, jump the gun. Kick in the pants, give it a shot. Take a shot at it. Right on target. Shot in the dark, under the gun. Shoot the breeze, son of a gun. Armed with the facts. Drop dead gorgeous. The list goes on and on. Nail it, derail it, shoot an email blast, time bomb. Violence is embedded in the infrastructure of our natural language without us even thinking about it. That could not matter at all. Certainly, it's benign when we launch it. But is there an opportunity to consciously create in our society, in our culture? Is there an opportunity to transform our language? Because in films, you've probably noticed this, but in films, it's rated R or even banned from being shown if people are making love. But it can be in films that aren't even rated R if people are blowing each other up, slicing each other up, shooting each other up, verbally assaulting each other up. What does that say about our culture aside from repressed sexuality? What does that say about our culture? And if we think this is the norm everywhere, it's not. Travel across the world and you'll see that every culture has different expressions, and there are places where things would be shocking and other things would be normal. So are we willing to consciously, with our own spiritual practice, take a look? Eric Butterworth says this. As far as you are concerned, the great need is to change your consciousness, dissolve your prejudices, and heal your fears. The truth is for you. It is a practical process by which you can achieve an effective life and at the same time become an effective instrument of love and harmony. He goes on to say, the missionary supports his efforts by the gospel teaching, go into all the world and preach the gospel, from Mark 16:15. However, Jesus also said, I, when I am lifted up, will draw all men to me, John 12:32. For the meta-missionary, Eric Butterworth says, the charge is clear. Go into the world of your own consciousness and convert the errant thoughts, the errant states of your own mind. Having done this, you are ready to go into the world to preach the gospel, but you will be a center of love, and your influence will be more in what you are than in what you say. Become a center of love. You will become a positive influence in your community. But more important, you will be centered in a circle of protection. In this awareness, no harm can befall you, for anyone coming into your space is lifted into the aura of your consciousness. You can become a center of love. Enough centers of love in the city and around the nation will help evoke wise actions by our government and bring the unified support of the people. Enough centers of love around the world will build bridges of communication and peace. Love is the answer. This morning, as I was preparing to come in here, I heard a knocking at my house, like a movement. And I heard it a few times. And I checked for one cat, and I checked for the second cat, and I saw both cats sitting next to me in the kitchen. And they were quiet and listening and looking. And it was dark because it's the season that it's now dark in the morning. And I heard it again, and I thought, the raccoons can't be back, can they? If you know about my house. I had 8 friends living there 1 year. And I followed the noise. And I kept listening deeply. And I found myself upstairs by a closet. If you grew up as me, this would be very scary. And I went closer and closer and closer listening. And then I found the woodpecker, who I don't mind is eating my siding. And I looked it up as its spirit totem animal before coming here this morning. Woodpecker is letting you know, it says, that this is the time to really pay attention, because opportunity has come knocking along with it. It is signaling you that great changes are happening, and it is up to you to seize the moment. That was for us this morning. And I close with these words from Unity Minister and many of our favorites, Reverend Sig Paulson. He says, "You are the answer. At this particular crossroads of human existence, it is up to all individuals who are capable of living in the revelation that man is the light of the world to bring about freedom from outer forms of worship, idolatry, and violence in their personal experience. This does not mean that one must stop going to church, working in the outer world, or advocating improvement in earthly conditions, but it does shift the scene of action to a deeper dimension of being than the outer rim of life. The one who is becoming a light in the world is gradually transferring his reliance on outer authority to the authority of his own divine selfhood, and is accepting the revelation of the Spirit of truth within him as valid and trustworthy. He is coming to recognize ever more clearly that his enemies are those of his own household. The images and reels of limitation he has imposed or accepted on his own power to be. He is willing to work enthusiastically on his own inner system of images, attitudes, and responses, and to give up trying to hammer others into molds of his design. The revelation of Jesus Christ is coming within his grasp. It is within the reach of his faith, his will, his understanding, his imagination, his enthusiasm, his authority and dominion. It is within this reach. So would you share this affirmation with me as you are guided? At long last, I accept myself as a permanent and vital part of the creative process of the universe. Together, at long last, I accept myself as a permanent and vital part of the creative process of the universe. I stop trying to obliterate myself, to get myself out of the way, to become impersonal. I joyously accept myself as the way and the personality through which the light shines into my world. And so it is.